Imagine a baby dragon trembling by the river, scared of everything around her. Until one day, she discovers a secret so powerful it changes her life forever. A new language that turns fear into trust, loneliness into friendship, and hesitation into courage. This is the story of Ember, a dragon who learns that the strongest magic is not fire, but connection. And it will leave you on the edge of your seat, wondering what could happen next. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. In a quiet corner of the misty forest, a small baby dragon named Ember struggled to find her place in the world. She was no ordinary dragon. Her scales shimmered with hints of gold, and her eyes held the curiosity of someone far older than she was. Yet despite her beauty and potential, Ember was facing a challenge that no one had warned her about. From the moment she hatched, Ember had been eager to learn how to breathe fire. Dragons were known for their strength, their courage, and their fiery breath. But Ember's flames refused to ignite. Every attempt ended in a tiny puff of smoke or a weak flicker that quickly faded. Frustration filled her small chest, and fear began to creep in. She worried she might never be a real dragon. The forest around Ember was alive with creatures who had mastered their skills. The older dragons soared high above, their wings cutting through the clouds effortlessly. The wolves and foxes watched from below. Impressed and cautious of the dragon's power, Ember felt a deep sense of isolation. She wanted to join her kin in the skies, to feel the wind beneath her wings. But the thought of failure made her hesitant to try. One morning, as Ember sat on a rock near the river, she noticed her reflection in the water. The shimmering gold of her scales seemed dull in the soft sunlight. A sigh escaped her tiny snout. She was tired of trying alone, tired of feeling different and inadequate. This was her crisis, a moment that would shape her future. Desperate for guidance, Ember decided to visit the wise old dragon known in the forest as Orion. He was known for his wisdom and patience, and he had helped many young dragons find their way. Ember approached him cautiously, her small wings trembling. "Why do you look so troubled, little one?" Orion asked, his voice deep and calm. "I can't breathe fire," Ember admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've tried everything, but it just doesn't work. I feel like I'm failing. ... Orion nodded slowly, his ancient eyes understanding. "Fire does not come from force alone," he said. "It comes from patience, from knowing yourself, and from finding the right moment. Sometimes, little dragon, the world waits for you to be ready, not the other way around." These words stayed with Ember as she left Orion and returned to her little den. She realized that perhaps her crisis was not a failure, but a lesson. She began to watch the forest carefully, noticing how the river moved, how the wind shifted, and how the sunlight touched the leaves. She practiced breathing softly, letting her emotions flow into her chest instead of pushing too hard. Days turned into weeks, and Ember's determination never wavered. Slowly, she noticed a change. Small sparks began to flicker at the tip of her snout, weak but persistent. Instead of fear, she felt hope. She learned that her crisis was not an end, but a beginning, a chance to grow stronger than she had imagined. One evening, ... As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ember climbed to the highest branch she could find. The forest stretched endlessly below her, filled with shadows and whispers of life. She inhaled deeply, feeling every heartbeat, every tremor of the wind. And then, with a steady breath and a calm heart, she exhaled. A flame burst forth, bright and warm, lighting up the twilight sky. Ember had found her fire. Her victory was more than just learning to breathe fire. It was a lesson in patience, courage, and believing in herself. The forest, which once seemed intimidating, now felt like a place where she belonged. Creatures of all kinds paused to watch her, not just in awe of her flame, but in admiration of her determination. Ember had turned her crisis into a triumph. From that day on, Ember was no longer the small dragon filled with doubt. She became a symbol of perseverance, a reminder that even in moments of uncertainty, strength could be found. She continued to explore the forest, practice her fire, and grow into the dragon she was always meant to be. A Baby Dragon in Crisis is a story that resonates with anyone facing a challenge. Ember's journey reminds us that struggles are not signs of weakness, but opportunities to learn and grow. Her story is about finding courage, embracing patience, and believing in oneself, even when the path seems impossible. In the end, Ember's small flame became a beacon. It shone not only in the dark forest, but in the hearts of anyone who heard her story. The crisis that once seemed so overwhelming became the moment that defined her, proving that even the smallest dragon can rise to greatness when they never give up. Ember had discovered her fire. Life in the forest seemed brighter and more exciting. Yet, a new challenge was quietly waiting for her. Despite her newfound strength, Ember felt uneasy around the forest river. She had watched other dragons play and glide across the water with ease, but for some reason, she could not trust herself near it. The river's gentle ripples now felt like a mirror of her past fears. One morning, as Ember wandered near the riverbank, she noticed strange bubbles rising from the water. They shimmered in the sunlight, floating slowly before popping silently. Curiosity overcame her hesitation, and she leaned closer. To her surprise, the bubbles seemed alive, moving as if they were inviting her to touch them. Ember extended a tiny claw, and a bubble floated onto her hand. It popped with a soft hiss, leaving a cool mist that tickled her scales. This simple moment sparked a feeling Ember had not known in a long time: trust. She realized that the river, which had once seemed dangerous, could become a place of wonder if she approached it with patience and care. The bubbles became her guide, each one teaching her to slow down, breathe deeply, and enjoy the moment instead of rushing. Over the next days, Ember returned to the river regularly. Slowly, she played with the bubbles, nudging them gently and watching them drift away. Sometimes she counted them, laughing softly when one burst too soon. She began to notice how her reflection rippled across the water, how the sunlight danced on her scales, and how the forest itself seemed to respond to her presence. Each bubble carried a lesson in patience, a small miracle that reminded her she could overcome fear through trust. As Ember's confidence grew, she discovered that the bubbles were not just ordinary water formations. They seemed to respond to her emotions. When she felt calm, the bubbles glowed softly, drifting gracefully across the surface. When she felt nervous, they wobbled and danced unpredictably. Ember realized that the river was teaching her more than just courage. It was teaching her to understand herself. One evening, a gentle mist rose from the river, and Ember decided to test her trust. She stepped carefully onto a smooth, flat stone in the middle of the water. The bubbles rose around her, shimmering like tiny stars. Ember closed her eyes and focused on her breath. Slowly, she stepped to another stone, then another. The water swirled gently around her claws, but she did not fall. The bubbles seemed to cheer her on, lifting her spirits and encouraging her to move forward. In that moment, Ember understood the miracle of trust. It was not a magical power granted suddenly, but a quiet, steady strength that grew through small actions, patience, and self-belief. She had learned to trust the river, trust the bubbles, and most importantly, trust herself. The forest, the river, and the bubbles had all become part of her journey, helping her grow in ways she had never imagined. As days passed, Ember's relationship with the river deepened. She began to glide over its surface, using her wings and fire to hover just above the water. The bubbles followed her, sparkling in her wake. Forest creatures watched in awe, amazed at how the small dragon had transformed fear into joy. Ember had become a symbol of courage and trust, showing that even the youngest and smallest dragon could face challenges with grace and patience. One morning, a young fox approached the riverbank. It watched Ember play with the bubbles, its eyes wide with wonder. Ember smiled and nudged a bubble toward the fox. It popped gently, leaving a cool mist on the fox's fur. The fox leapt back in surprise, then realized it was safe. Ember had shared a moment of trust, teaching the fox the same lesson the river had taught her. The miracle was spreading beyond Ember, touching the lives of others. Ember's journey with the bubbles and the river was more than just fun. It became a daily practice of mindfulness, a way to connect with nature and herself. She discovered that trust was built through experience, patience, and consistent effort. Every bubbles and trust is a story that inspires anyone facing fear or uncertainty. Ember's journey shows that miracles are not always sudden or magical. They are moments of understanding, growth, and courage that appear when we open ourselves to trust. Her experience with the river and the bubbles demonstrates that even small dragons, or anyone, can turn fear into strength and hesitation into confidence. In the end, Ember glided across the river at sunset, bubbles sparkling all around her. The forest seemed alive, filled with whispers of encouragement and admiration. She had discovered the miracle of trust, and it had changed her life forever. The small dragon who once feared the water had learned that patience, courage, and belief in oneself could create true magic, one bubble at a time. After learning to trust herself and the river, Ember faced a new challenge. Life in the forest was full of other dragons, older and stronger, who expected respect and obedience from younger dragons. Ember had always followed instructions carefully, but she noticed that simply obeying did not bring understanding or real connection. She realized that there was a deeper lesson waiting for her, learning the power of understanding over authority. One afternoon, as Ember wandered near a cliff overlooking the forest, she saw a group of older dragons gathered. Their scales gleamed in the sunlight, and their wings stretched wide. They were discussing the ways of the forest, how to hunt, and how to protect the young dragons. Ember listened quietly, curious but nervous. She knew that stepping forward could be seen as disrespectful, yet she wanted to learn, not just follow. Embark quietly approached the group. One of the elder dragons, a massive dragon named Ashwin, noticed her. He raised a claw and spoke with authority. "Young dragon, this is no place for questions. Follow and obey, and you will survive." Ember felt a flicker of fear. Blank. But she remembered the lessons of the river and the bubbles. She took a deep breath and replied softly, "I want to understand, not just obey." Ashwin blinked, surprised. No young dragon had ever spoken like this before. He expected submission, not curiosity. Ember continued, If I only follow without understanding, how will I grow? If I do not know why, I cannot truly help." The elder dragons exchanged glances, some skeptical, some intrigued. Ember's words carried a quiet strength, a calm confidence born from her experiences with trust. Over the next days, Ember spent time with the elders, observing their actions, asking questions, and offering small suggestions. She noticed that understanding how and why decisions were made allowed her to contribute in ways obedience alone never could. She helped younger dragons see patterns in the forest, recognize safe paths, and notice signs of change in the weather or water levels. Gradually, the elders began to trust her input. One evening, a sudden storm approached. Strong winds and heavy rain swept through the forest. The elder dragons were focused on sheltering the youngest and protecting the territory. Ember realized that she could use what she had learned. She guided a small group of dragons to a hidden cave near the cliff, explaining why it was safer than the usual shelters. The dragons followed her carefully, trusting her judgment because they understood her reasoning. After the storm passed, Ashwin approached Ember. His eyes held a mixture of pride and respect. "I have watched you," he said. "You have learned what many do not. Understanding is stronger than authority. You have earned your place not because you obeyed, but because you comprehended and shared your knowledge." Ember felt warmth in her chest, a mix of relief and pride. She had discovered that true connection is built through comprehension, empathy, and communication, not power or fear. Ember continued to grow as a dragon who valued understanding. The next day, Ember knocked on a number of dragons in the city and showed them that mistakes were not failures, but lessons to be explored. Her approach created harmony within the group, and even the elders began to listen more carefully. One day, Ember noticed a small dragon hesitating near the river. It trembled at the water's edge, unsure of its steps. Ember approached gently, recalling the bubbles that had taught her trust. She did not command the dragon to move. Instead, she explained what she had learned about the water, how to step carefully, and why each stone was safe. The young dragon listened, then followed Ember's guidance. It was a small moment, yet it showed the power of understanding over authority, teaching that patience and knowledge can guide others better than fear or command. Ember's experiences spread beyond her immediate circle. Dragons from other parts of the forest began to seek her advice. They came to learn how to observe, reflect, and make decisions based on understanding rather than blind obedience. Ember's story became an example of leadership built on empathy, patience, and communication. She had shown that even a young dragon could inspire change when she chose comprehension over command. The connection between Ember and the forest grew stronger every day. She realized that authority might control actions temporarily, but understanding created lasting trust and cooperation. She learned that guiding others required listening, explaining, and sharing experiences. These moments of connection strengthened the forest community, making it resilient and united. Ember had found her purpose, not as a dragon who demanded respect, but as one who earned it through insight, compassion, and understanding. Understanding over authority is more than a lesson for dragons. It is a story that teaches anyone, young or old, that true leadership comes from empathy, patience, and a willingness to learn. Ember's journey demonstrates that real power lies in connecting with others, sharing knowledge, and fostering trust. Through this connection, the forest became not just a place to survive, but a place to thrive. In the quiet of the forest, as the sun set behind the mountains, Ember perched atop a cliff. The wind ruffled her scales, tarrying the sounds of dragons communicating, learning. and cooperating. She had discovered a miracle greater than fire or wings, the miracle of connection. Understanding over authority had transformed her life and the lives of all around her, proving that wisdom, trust, and empathy could change the world, one dragon at a time. Ember had grown in ways she could never have imagined. From the timid baby dragon who feared the world beyond her nest, she had become a young dragon who understood trust, patience, and the power of connection. Yet, the forest held more lessons for her. Now, Ember faced a challenge that was unlike anything she had encountered before. A challenge that would teach her a new language, the language of friendship. One bright morning, Ember noticed a small dragon sitting alone by the river. The dragon's scales shimmered with uncertainty, and its eyes darted nervously at the rippling water. Ember remembered her own struggles, the days when even a simple splash felt frightening. She approached slowly, careful not to startle the dragon. Instead of speaking in commands or instructions, she spoke softly, sharing her own story. "I was afraid of the river too," Ember said. "I did not understand it at first, but I learned that it can be gentle and safe if you pay attention." The young dragon tilted its head, listening. It did not speak back, but Ember could feel its attention. She realized that friendship was not about words alone, or even shared actions. It was about presence, understanding, and the willingness to meet someone where they were. Over the following days, Ember visited the river regularly. She showed the young dragon how to step carefully on the stones, how to feel the current without fear, and how to enjoy the water's cool touch. She did not command, she guided. She did not insist, she suggested. Slowly, the dragon began to follow her lead, mimicking her movements, learning at its own pace. This new approach transformed Ember. She understood that friendship was built on patience and mutual respect. She began to notice small signs of communication she had never seen before. The tilt of a head, the flick of a tail, the way the young dragon's eyes lit up when it discovered something new. Ember realized that every creature has its own language, and friendship required learning and speaking that language. As Ember practiced this new language, her connections with other dragons deepened as well. She no longer relied solely on authority or knowledge. She listened more than she spoke, observed more than she directed. Dragons of all ages began to come to her, drawn by her gentle guidance and the respect she showed for their feelings and perspectives. She discovered that true leadership could coexist with friendship, and that understanding others could be more powerful than commanding them. One afternoon, a challenge arose that tested Ember's new understanding. A sudden fire broke out in a dry part of the forest. Smoke rose into the sky, and dragons scrambled in fear. Ember did not panic. Instead, she remembered the lessons of trust, connection, and the language of friendship. She approached the younger dragons calmly, guiding them to safety with a combination of gentle gestures and clear, simple instructions. The dragons followed, not out of fear, but because they trusted her and understood her guidance. After the fire was under control, the elder dragons gathered around Ember. Ashwin, the elder who had once emphasized authority, looked at her with admiration. "You have taught us all a lesson," he said. "Friendship and understanding are as important as strength and wisdom. You have shown that a dragon can lead without commanding and guide without fear." Ember felt a quiet pride. She had transformed not only herself, but the forest community around her. From that day forward, Ember continued to practice the language of friendship. She helped dragons learn to share their feelings, express themselves, and listen to one another. She taught them that mistakes were not failures, but opportunities for growth. Her approach created a forest alive with cooperation, empathy, and respect. Dragons were no longer divided by age or strength, but united by understanding and friendship. Ember also discovered that the language of friendship extended beyond words or actions. It was the feeling of presence, the energy shared in silence, and the trust built over time. She realized that even dragons who could not speak as she did could communicate through gestures, expressions, and shared experiences. This realization strengthened her bonds with every dragon she met, allowing her to form friendships that were deep, lasting, and meaningful. As the sun set over the forest, Ember perched on her favorite cliff. The river reflected the orange glow of the sky, and dragons moved through the trees, communicating in the quiet, unspoken language she had learned to understand. Ember had transformed completely. She was no longer the fearful baby dragon she once was. She had grown into a dragon who could inspire, guide, and connect with others through the language of friendship. This transformation was more than personal growth. It was a lesson for the entire forest. Dragons learned that friendship could bridge differences, build trust, and create a community where everyone felt valued and understood. Ember's journey showed that even the smallest dragon could change the world, not through fire or strength alone, but through empathy, patience, and a new way of speaking to others. A new language of friendship was the gift Ember gave to the forest. It was a reminder that connection, understanding, and compassion are stronger than fear or authority. The forest thrived under her guidance. And dragons of every age learned that friendships built on respect and trust are the true magic of life. Ember had discovered that the greatest power a dragon can have is not in wings, claws, or fire, but in the ability to connect with others, to listen, and to speak a language that everyone can understand.